Help me. Help me, please. You've got to listen. I am telling the truth. And the bullet was where? And you removed the bullet. How? With a knife on the kitchen floor. Help me. Help me, please. I've been here 33 years and I've never seen such a bizarre case. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Alright, so coming up, I have a very crazy story for you in this episode. Great reaction to the last story, the switched at birth story. Yeah, lots of really interesting sort of thoughts and feelings on that story. Thank you very much. I'm going to go straight to shout outs and what did I call it before? Extra talk? Extra? I don't know. Why can I never remember the fucking name of things that I call them ever? Extra talk. That's what we'll call it this week. Alright then. Let's get to it. So, I'm going to start with saying hello to John Indie Rock. Hello, John. Thank you for a very, very lovely post on the Facebook group. It was really nice. Really lovely. It was kind of in response to the Barry sounds like a 50-year-old Scottish woman post. So John wrote something really nice. Thank you for that. Karen Daly. Karen is asking for a return of the Shouty Man contest because she missed it, because she's just catching up. So a while ago, those of you who've listened for a while, you will know, I did a Shouty Man contest. So, you had the chance to be the Shouty Man, or you could, get your dog to make a loud noise, and your dog could be the Shouty Man. So, let me know if it's something you're up for, something you want. I'm happy to do it again. That would be great. Oh, I cannot get enough of the unflattering pet pictures. It might be the greatest thing that I've ever asked you to send me. Honestly, these pictures, and they're on Instagram, they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook. Honestly, this post has gone insane. I mean, it's just brilliant. It's like animals looking ridiculous, like dogs trying to get inside dishwashers. It's like Z Malin posted her cat with its come to bed eyes. It's just, I've laughed so hard at these pictures, so that's been brilliant. Jenny Wyatt also posted something on Facebook which was great, and said, I don't know why this makes me think of you, Barry. It was a post that says, so I'm telling you a story, but along the way I'm going to tell you 17 mini stories because I just can't really stay focused. So thanks for that, Jenny. That was nice of you. And lastly, on extra talk, extra whatever we're calling it, I just want to say hello, thank you to Barney Black over at the excellent Bloody Murder podcast for the incredible piece of fan art that he did of me in a superhero costume. I Loved it. I love it so much. So yeah, so if you've not seen it, it's on the social media stuff just now. Alright, okay. Enough of that. This week, I've got another family story. And after this one, the family series is going to be winding down and I'm going to move in a different direction. At the end of the episode, I'm going to be telling you how I want to end that, so please stick around for that. Oh my god, I said please stick around like that, like I thought I was on like some sort of like fucking TV show that was going to an advert break. So coming up after the break, we have this. Please stick around for that. Why the fuck did I say that? That's ridiculous. Anyway, for now, let's get to the story this week. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. In 1985, in Squaw Valley, California, there is a really, really disturbing sight by the side of the road. It's a body. And this body is on fire. It is surrounded by piles of burnt clothing. And when police get to this body, they realise it's a young girl in her early 20s and she's burning alive. Before police can get her to the hospital, she dies. When they examine her body, they realise that she's covered in marks and wounds. Her 2 front teeth are knocked out. But there is no way for them to identify who she is. So she becomes a Jane Doe. She's a mystery. This is a mystery. 5 years later, a second body would be found not too far away from where the burning body had been. This time, it's a girl again, late teens, and she's in a cardboard box. She's covered in bruises, stab marks, and again, police have no way to identify her. So she becomes the second Jane Doe. I feel so American when I say Jane Doe, because it's not really a phrase you use in the UK, I don't think. I don't know what UK police call cases like that. I'm not really sure, but Jane Doe sounds so American. Okay, so let's look at motherhood, parenting. Now, I've never been a mother, and I'm sure you could all tell me tales of wonderful mothers, brave mothers, absent mothers, terrible mothers. I'm sure that collectively all of that will be out there. Sadly, this story is of a really terrible, terrible mother. One of the worst. Teresa Cross was born in 1946 in Sacramento, California. And for Teresa, life was good. She had a sister. She was really, really close to her parents. So there was just, her parents, 2 kids, and they were a really, really close family. And then, as it often will, life gets in the way and fucks everything up. Her beloved dad, he has Parkinson's. He becomes diagnosed with Parkinson's, and if you have ever had the misfortune to ever be around someone with Parkinson's, you will know what a horrendous disease Parkinson's is. So, her dad's health, it really begins to deteriorate, and she relies a lot on her mum. Teresa really relies a lot on her mum, and then suddenly her mother dies of a heart attack. And for her, it's just devastating. She's young. She's like 14 when this happens. So her mum's dead from a heart attack, and her dad has Parkinson's, and it's accelerating quickly. He needs a lot of help, and he needs a lot of support. So what she does is, Teresa at 14, she begins to look after her dad almost full time. But it gets to the point where he, as much as she's trying to, he needs to be in a facility where someone can actually properly be looking after him. And so he sells the family home and he moves into a residence where he can actually get the treatment that he needs. So for Teresa, she's 16, and at this point she's a little bit, I don't know what the best way to put it is, but a little bit maybe abandoned by life. I think, she's just a bit like lost. She's lost her mum. Her dad's now in this kind of facility, and here she is, she's 16. It's 1961. And, so she's in California. She's on her own, and she meets a man called Clifford Clyde Sanders. Now, she's 16. Clifford is 22. And they begin a relationship. Alright, Clifford, calm it down. It's a bit creepy. It's a bit creepy, isn't it? But then, I wonder, did this just happen in the 60s? Was that alright to have that sort of, 16 to 22 is quite the age gap. I think if a 22-year-old now was to come and say, I'm going out with a 16-year-old, we would all be raising an eyebrow. We'd all have something to say about that. Yeah. Anyway, so that was the situation. That was what was happening for Teresa. So they meet, they fall in love, and at age 16, she falls pregnant. And again, to me now, 16 seems young. Very, very, very young to be pregnant. But then, hang on, right? I'm saying that. There was a girl in my year at school. She fell pregnant when she was 14. It was like that was like the biggest thing in town. It was like, oh my God, she's 14 and she's pregnant. Who's the dad? It was like this big, like massive kind of like thing. So, maybe 16 isn't that young. With Clifford, she gives birth to her first child. And it's a son, and she calls him Howard. What a terribly unsexy name. My apologies if you're called Howard, but it's not the sexiest of names, is it? You can do things with it. You can be like a Howie, or you can be like I don't know what else you could be. The How Man. There's something, but Howard, not sexy. So they get married because, she's had a child, and that's what you do, apparently. Have a child to get married. And, let's think. What's the best way to describe their marriage? Well, I'm going to say it was pretty goddamn bollocks. It was a mess. They argued all the time. They fought day and night. For some reason, Teresa became convinced, absolutely convinced, that Clifford was cheating on her. Now, I don't know that he actually necessarily was cheating on her, but she was convinced of it. So they fight about that an awful lot. Also, they get drunk together an awful lot. And when they get drunk, they get a little bit violent. So there's a little bit of hitting back and forth. Now, that's on both sides. So she gets violent with him, he gets violent with her, and it all just turns into a big, screaming, horrible mess. Numerous times, the police get called to their house, and they're both standing there, completely covered in bruises. But here's the thing, nothing ever really gets done about that. So, we're going to learn a lot in this story about police inadequacy and how much the police just did not do the job that they should have been doing. So, Teresa would call police and she would say, "Oh, he's hitting me, he's beating me up, he's abusive, he's drunk, come to the house." And when police would arrive, they would go, "Well, we can't really see any problems here. Carry on, as you were. We're just going to get on our merry way." And so things just went round in a circle for this couple. They just continued to fight and argue and get drunk all the time. So they've got this young baby, and that brings an awful lot of stress to it, and it eventually reaches a head where they have a massive, massive argument. She's still accusing him of having an affair, whether it's true or whether it's not, and he says, "Do you know what? I'm leaving. I've had enough." He actually says to her, "You're crazy. You're actually crazy, and I need to get out of here." As he leaves the house with the parting words, "You are crazy," Teresa takes a gun out of her pocket that he doesn't know that she has, and she shoots him in the back. He falls down on the doorstep of their house and he dies. So immediately she calls the police. The police come to the house and she says, "My husband's dead. I've shot him, and I shot him through self-defense." Now, what I need to point out here is, at the point where she shot Clifford dead, she was pregnant with her second child. So by the time this is processed and she goes to court, she's quite far on in her pregnancy. And in court, she pleads self-defense. She pleads that she was this pregnant victim and that he was abusive towards her, and there's no way that she was at all abusive towards him, but that she kept a gun for protection because she could never quite tell what his moods were going to be like. And the jury buy this, and she is acquitted. Now, I'm not saying here, I'm not saying that Clifford maybe wasn't having an affair and didn't play a massive part in their arguing back and forth and the very, very, very volatile relationship they had. But essentially, she's just gotten away with murder. So, that baby that she was pregnant with when all this was happening, she's about to give birth to that baby, and it'll be her first daughter, and she calls her Sheila. In the way that an Australian would say, "G'day, Sheila." Yeah, exactly. Australian listeners, please feel free to get in touch and tell me how wonderful that impression was. Really quickly, after the birth of baby Sheila, Teresa goes into a period of really, really heavy drinking. She is falling in and out of bars all the time. She's drinking in the house from morning through to night time. So she's got, just to be clear and keep on track with the picture, she's got by now a 2-year-old son, and she's got baby Sheila. And she's kind of just leaving her kids with whoever will look after them. She's like, "Want to take these kids? for a couple of days while I go and get pissed up in the town, while I go and drink the bars dry. Fine, have my kids. She's really, she's not in a great place. She's not in a great place. So it's during this time when she's not in a great place and she's attempting to raise these kids but not doing a great job of it, that she meets a man called Estelle Thornberry. Now they start to go out. Oh my god. I've just realised the weirdest fucking thing. This is so strange. This is so weird. His name, right, this man that she meets, this is quite a small part of the story, but she meets a man called Estelle Thornberry. This is bizarre, right? So, yesterday, I was in work, and I was looking for, right, let me explain this properly. I've got, within my work, there's like a sort of system you can go onto in the computer, and it works a little bit like a telephone directory, but it's visual, so you can type anyone's name in, and that person, it immediately flashes up, and you can sort of get their contact details, you can get their email address, you can get whatever. It's internal within the organisation, but you can find someone. I was trying to track down a guy who works in another building, and when I was describing him to people, they were going, "Oh yeah, that's his name's John. Don't know what his surname is." And I was saying to people, "No, you're totally wrong. His second name is Thornberry. His second name's Thornberry, and I'm really sure that his first name's Eddie." At which point I was just getting blank faces from people and going, "Eddie Thornberry? I've never heard of an Eddie Thornberry in this organisation. I don't know who you're talking about." And I was going, no, he's definitely called... I've just realised it's because a couple of nights ago, when I was researching this story, I've written down this guy's name, which is Estelle Thornberry. That's obviously gone into my bloody brain, and I've decided that this man in my workplace is called the same name as the man in this story. That's weird. It's like bloody weird. Yeah, that's really strange. What next? Am I going to be like, does anyone know what office Ted Bundy is in? Fucking hell. What's the name of the really lovely woman on reception? Is it Jean-Benet Ramsey? Is that her name? Fuck, that is very, very, very strange that I have decided that a person from one of these stories actually works in my work. That's odd. Anyway, right, so I mean he is a very, very brief moment. Estelle Thornberry, who doesn't work in my work, by the way, they're together for a very short period of time, but he breaks up with her because, he will basically say she was crazy. She was like insane. She would just drink all day long, and her behaviour was just off the scale levels of craziness. So, now, Teresa, this is 1966. And she is about to meet a man that she'll be with for a slightly more sustained period of time. And this is Mr. Robert Knorr. In 1966, they marry, and she becomes Teresa Knorr. She's married. She's 20 years old. This is his second marriage by age 20. But I'm not judging that. I'm not judging. No one's judging that. That's just what it is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you know what happens to Teresa in the next 10 years of her life. And it's pretty bonkers. But the reason I'm just going to encapsulate those 10 years is because it's the point after that I really want to get into. So, the 10 years of Teresa's life go like this. As I said, 20 years old, she marries Robert Knorr. She falls pregnant for the third time, and she has a daughter called Susan in 1967. A year later, she has another child, Billy Bob. Then, she has Robert a year after that. And by 1970, she has her final child, Terry. It's 1970 and she has 6 kids. She's 24 years old. Her track record of relationships, has it been great? No, it's been it's been a bit of a shit show, and it's about to get worse. Her and Robert are at the point where they can't be around each other without it being a huge argument all the time. Things are very, very nasty between Robert and Teresa. She is back to her accusing him of having an affair ways. I mean, this is a tune we have heard from Teresa before, and I don't really know what the root of that is. I read a lot of different articles about it, I read a lot of different things, and it just seemed that she always had this thing about men having an affair. So it's obviously something has happened somewhere along the way that's given her this sort of paranoia that every man is doing the same thing. I just couldn't quite pinpoint which man in her life made her think this, and yeah, and it's like an obsession that absolutely drives her. So much like the first husband, he just decides he can't take it anymore. He can't take any more of her, and he says, I'm out of here. See you later. So long, suckers. Goodbye. So, he leaves. She's on her own with 6 kids. And for the next couple of years, she has the odd one night stand here and there. She has 2 more relationships, but neither of these last. Teresa finds herself entirely alone with 6 kids. And this is where the real problems begin. Teresa finds herself in a place where she is drinking really heavily. And now the kids are all starting to sort of grow up, and as they get a bit older, they start to become really aware of their mother's ways. They start to fear her. You know, she's drunk, she's angry, she's always shouting about something. And now she starts to go down the road of some very, very worrying behaviours. She disconnects the phone to the house. She won't answer the front door if it rings. The neighbours begin to notice that the kids are becoming really withdrawn. There's mess just piling up outside of the house. There's a smell of piss coming from the house. The curtains are always closed. Now, here's the thing. It's 2019, right? And if you were aware of that kind of thing, you would do something, wouldn't you? I would do something. I mean, I'm the nosiest neighbour in town, so I would be right round there going, what the hell's going on here? But nobody really did anything. People were kind of observing this and going, wonder what's going on at the Nor house. The curtains are always closed. Yeah, those kids look a bit withdrawn. Well, you never see Teresa anymore. But nobody was actually doing anything about it. They were just commenting on it from a distance. But what was happening inside that house? Well, one of the children, Terry, the youngest, would later describe it as living inside an insane asylum. Teresa's mental health, it had reached an uncontrollable place. And her kids were just living in hell. They were living in absolute hell. Here is the kind of things that, and I warn you, these are not nice to hear. They're not nice at all. These are the kind of things that she was subjecting them to. She was burning cigarettes into their skin. She would pick her least favourite child that day, and she would make the other kids hold that one down while she threw knives at them. She forced the children to beat each other. She refused to feed them for days at a time. When she got really drunk, she would wave her gun around at the kids, and then she would pull one of them close and hold it to their heads. Oh, fuck me. That's horrendous. Horrendous. Absolutely terrible. Now, you will know, right, if you've listened to this podcast for a long time, and I have said this before and I will say it again, I try to take a very balanced view on things, and it's obvious, it's clear. Teresa needed intervention. She needed help for her mental health, but it just wasn't happening. It just wasn't happening. So I'm not in any way, shape or form excusing her behaviour, but there was a serious condition going on there that she needed help for. But actually that's not really what my focus is. My focus is, for those kids, that must have just been hell. They were just living in hell, basically, is what they were living in. Now, the eldest child, the very first son that she had, Howard, Howard with the sexy name, he just left the situation. He just got out. He said, I can't be in this anymore. It's horrendous. And, you know, I really feel for him, because I think he wasn't in a position where he could take his 5 other siblings out of that. So he had to leave and look after himself, and that's exactly what he did. So it meant that Teresa was now in the house with her 2 boys, Billy Bob and Robert, and the 3 daughters, Sheila, Susan and Terry. Now it's at this point that Sheila and Susan, they're beginning to reach sort of teenage age. And it's when they get to this age that, although it's been fucking horrendous with Teresa so far, it's about to get way, way worse. She seems to really, at this point, start to focus her anger, her rage, her hatred of the world against Susan and Sheila, her daughters who are growing up at this point. So she starts with Susan. She hates her the most out of everyone in the family. What she actually hates about Susan is that she's turning into an attractive young woman, and Teresa cannot deal with this. She can't deal with the fact that her daughter is blossoming. And so, not being able to deal with it, here's what she does. She starts to tell the rest of the family that Susan is a witch. Not she's a witch, as in, I don't want to use the word bitch, as in she's a witch, as in a real witch, as in J.K. Rowling could have written about her in Harry Potter. She actually tells the other kids, see your sister, Susan. She's actually casting spells in this house. She's causing misery in this house by the way that she's casting spells upon us. She's a bad witch. You know, she's not the good witch like Sabrina, the teenage witch. She's not got a talking cat. No, we're talking evil. So the other kids are like, okay, I don't really think my sister is a witch. I don't really think witches exist, but okay, that's what Mum has got to say about the situation. And it's around about this time that Teresa starts to gain a lot of weight. And she starts to accuse Susan of casting spells on her to make this weight gain happen. Okay, sure. So, as a punishment for Susan's witchiness, what she would do is she would handcuff Susan to her bed and make the other kids punish her. So the other kids would have to kick Susan in the face. They would have to punch her all over her body while Teresa stood there and made them do it. My God. So at this time, the 5 kids, they were going to school. So they were, still going in to school every day. Alright, they were withdrawn. Teachers were starting to notice they weren't really doing that well in class. Sometimes they couldn't stay awake. They all looked a bit thin. But teachers just sort of overlooked it, almost. Susan was just taken out of school entirely because Teresa hated her so much that she just wouldn't let her out of the house. She would just handcuff her to something different. So if it wasn't the bed, she was handcuffed to the kitchen table. So Susan just stops going to school entirely. And eventually, one by one, all of Teresa Knorr's children stop attending school. Now, do you think anything was done about this? No, it wasn't. Again. Hello, the 1970s. Hiya. Did we not do anything about an entire family just stopping coming to school? No, apparently not. This went completely unnoticed, unreported by people, which is just so disappointing. You just really wish that somebody had gone, isn't it very strange that all 5 of these children have one by one stopped coming to school? So at home things just got worse for Susan. Teresa began to starve her daughter for long, long periods of time. And if any of the other children even dared to think about sneaking food to their sister, my God, they were in for a world of pain should they even attempt it. Now Susan, when she wasn't handcuffed to a table or a bed, she would actually stand up to her mother. She would actually argue back, and they would, have real arguments back and forth. But the thing was, Teresa always had the cruelest of methods to torture Susan and to get her into line. So there is a day where Susan and Teresa are having a particularly heated argument in the kitchen. And this is where Teresa is going to really take things up a level. They're arguing, they're fighting back and forth. And Teresa takes out her gun and she shoots at her daughter. The bullet enters Susan's body and it lodges itself in her back. It goes through her chest and it lodges itself in her back. Now at this point, do you think Teresa has a moment? Some sort of clarity or anything that goes, oh my God, I've literally just shot my daughter? No, she doesn't. Realising that the shot hasn't killed Susan, she decides, I'm not going to get her any sort of medical advice. I'm not going to seek any help here because you see the bullet, well, it hasn't killed her. So here's what she does. She puts Susan in the bath And she makes the other family members look after Susan. I mean, can you imagine that? Can you imagine? Can you imagine literally your mother coming to you and going, something's happened. Basically, I've shot your sister and she's in the bath. So if you wouldn't all mind just taking turns looking after her, that would be great. I mean, nuts. It's absolutely it's insane. So like I said, Susan doesn't die from this bullet shot, but the bullet is actually still in her body. There follows now maybe 2-3 weeks where Teresa pulls back a little bit on the torture of Susan, and Susan starts to regain a bit of her strength and a bit of her energy. And as soon as she feels strong enough, she runs away from the house. She does exactly what you would want her to do in this story. She runs and she goes straight to the police. She goes to the police and she says, look, here's the situation. Me and my siblings, we're living in hell. My mother shot me. I have a bullet in my body. We're tortured daily. We're starved. She puts cigarettes out on us. She beats us. She makes us beat each other. And here's what police do. They take Susan to a mental institution. Yeah, that's what the 1970s called it. So they take her to a facility where they say, we have a young girl. She's obviously a bit insane. She's making up this story about her mother. And Susan is of course going, I'm not making this story up. I'm telling you right now, this is the situation. And everyone's going, no, that doesn't sound right to us. So here's what they do. A couple of days in the asylum, and police march Susan back to the house. Back to the hell that is her mother. They take her right back. I just find it insane. I know I keep saying it. It's just like, come on. What I find really weird about this is, right, it's as if police in the 1970s had never heard a crazy story in their life. It's as if people are going, that's a really far-fetched story you're telling. What? Some sort of abusive mother? What are you talking about? Such a thing doesn't exist. Well, it does exist. You're seeing the actual evidence of it in front of you. She's telling you the story, but they're going, no, it doesn't exist. This is madness. This is back to the domestic abuse thing. Oh, no, it doesn't really... Yeah. No, it's just people being dramatic. It's just people being silly. Well, she's back in the house, and they continue to fight. Susan and Teresa just fight all the time. And it's not too long before Teresa takes another violent turn towards her daughter. This time not with a gun, but with a pair of scissors. In the kitchen, one day, Susan, Teresa, having an argument, Teresa takes a pair of scissors and she stabs her daughter in the back. It's at this point that Susan says, right, enough is enough. I have tried to report you and no one has listened. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave. I'm going to go from this house right now and you will never see me again. I will never have anything to do with this family again. I'm going. I'm packing a bag. I'm out of here. And interestingly, Teresa agrees. She says, yeah, I just think the best thing would be if you left this house. But here is the deal. I will only let you leave if I can take that bullet out of your body. You are not willingly leaving this house with that bullet still in you. And Susan says, well, what are you going to do? Cut me open. Take the bullet out. 2 hours later, Susan is lying on the kitchen floor unconscious because her mother has drugged her with strong painkillers. And it's while Susan lies there unconscious that Teresa hands the 15-year-old Robert, her son, a knife and says, "Remove the bullet." And he does. He goes to the bit in Susan's back where the bullet is, and he cuts open his sister's back to take out the bullet. Oof. With the bullet removed, Susan wakes up and she is in agonising pain. She's handcuffed to the kitchen table with now a massive wound in her back. But Teresa just leaves her lying on the kitchen floor. And very quickly, an infection sets in. And at this point, Teresa starts to panic. She starts getting hold of any medication that she can find, any antibiotics that are in the house, anything at all, and it's forcing them down Susan's throat. But it's not working. And realising it's not working, here's what she does. She goes around the house and she takes all of Susan's belongings, any clothing, anything at all that belonged to Susan, toothbrushes, hairbrushes, anything at all that was Susan's, and she starts to put it into plastic bags. She piles these bags up in the kitchen. And as Susan lies on the kitchen floor with a very serious infection from the big, huge wound in her back, Teresa says to her two sons, "Okay, put some duct tape around her legs and her arms, and we're going to carry her to the car." And that's exactly what they do. They carry Susan to the car, and Teresa orders the boys to drive away from here. And they go to Squaw Valley. They find a quiet place. It's not too far from the side of the road. And they lay down Susan's body at the side of the road. It's at this point Teresa covers her daughter in gasoline. She places all of the bags of Susan's clothing and belongings around Susan's body, covers them all in gasoline, and then she sets her daughter on fire. Now, Susan isn't dead when the fire starts, but with her two brothers watching and her mother standing over her, she's burning alive. So way back when I started the story and I told you about the police finding a body at the side of the road that becomes a Jane Doe and a massive mystery, that body was Susan Knorr. I mean, what do you say about that? What do you say about that? I don't know. Like, it's so fucked up. It's such a mess. There's so many things we could pull apart here. A, setting fire to your actual own child. That's just, like, what? That's actually too big to just even have to deal with. Also, Susan, I mean, that must have just been excruciating. An excruciating way to die. Horrendous. Those two brothers, those poor 15 and 13-year-old brothers who had to actually be a part of that. Horrific. What an awful, awful life. What an awful existence. So does this bring any clarity to Teresa? Does she think it's gone too far? I need to stop. I need help. No, she doesn't think any of that. In fact, what she does is she comes back to the house and she decides to turn her attention towards her other daughter, Sheila. She takes all of the hatred and the anger that she had for Susan and now turns it towards her other daughter. And it all begins in the same way. It's hitting her, it's starving her, it's handcuffing her to the bed, making the other kids beat her. What she does with Sheila is she takes her and she ties her hands and her legs so that she can't escape. And she forces her into a cupboard in the downstairs of the house, and she won't let her out. And while Sheila is in that cupboard, she doesn't receive any food, any water, and none of the kids are allowed to go near that cupboard. The other siblings who remember this time will say that they would walk past the cupboard, and what they would hear is they would hear Sheila starving to death and saying, "Help me," but that they couldn't do anything because they were so terrified of what Teresa would do to them. Sheila died of dehydration in that cupboard. And when Teresa had discovered that she had died, she doesn't bother to remove Sheila's body. She just leaves the body there. Now the smell of the body begins to fill up the whole house. The whole house just stinks of death at this point. So Teresa realises she's going to have to do something because the smell is going to eventually reach other people and she's going to have some serious questions to answer. So she thinks that by removing Sheila's body, she can remove the smell. So the same two boys, her two little boys who helped her with Susan's death, she orders them to take their sister Sheila's dead body out of the cupboard, pack it up in a cardboard box, and drive to a place and dump it. And they do. Honestly, these poor kids. Now, her plan to get rid of the smell doesn't really work, and so, panicking, Teresa gets one of her very, very bright ideas. Not so bright. She gets the kids to douse the house. Douse the house? Hi, yeah. She gets the kids to cover the house in gasoline, and then she sets fire to it. Oh, Teresa. Oh, for God's sake. However, the plan doesn't really work because as soon as the house goes on fire, neighbours round about call the fire brigade who come and they put the fire out pretty fast. The whole let's burn the house down and it'll get rid of all the evidence hasn't really worked. Now, it's at this point that between the death of the two sisters and the fire that things have to change. You would have thought earlier on things had to change, but the kids were so terrified that they just couldn't get away from her. But now this, with the fire, makes them realise they have to run. They have to get away from her, and that's exactly what they do. The remaining kids in that family, they flee to get away from Teresa as far as they possibly can. That is except for Robert. Robert, who's been heavily involved in both of his sister's deaths, both of his sister's disposals so far. He stays with his mum. And Teresa decides that they're going to go to Nevada and that they're going to hide out. Now, the other siblings, what do? They go to police. They go to police and they say, this is what has happened. We've got two sisters who are dead. She tried to burn the house down. And once more, police just don't listen. They just don't take it seriously. They think it all sounds like fantasy, storytelling. And they're of course going, it's not. This is reality, but they're not being listened to. Terry, the youngest daughter, She just refuses to be dismissed as a as a storyteller, as someone who's making this up. So when the police won't listen to her, this is what she does. I love this. I think it's pretty cool. She goes to the TV show America's Most Wanted, and they sit up and they listen. They hear the story and they go, okay, we're listening. They look back in their files and they find these stories of these two Jane Does. One found in a cardboard box and one burning by the side of the road. And they go, okay, this makes a lot of sense to us. And so, it's America's Most Wanted that go to police and say, you've got to take this seriously. You've actually got to listen to what these kids are telling you. What Terry, who's the youngest in this family, is telling you is true. You've got to listen. And so a search begins to find Teresa. And for a couple of months, they can't find her. Not sure what state she's in. Not sure if she's left America. Not sure where she is. However, eventually, after some good detective work, they hunt her down in Nevada and she is arrested. Now, when she's arrested, she immediately denies all knowledge of this. She immediately goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. No. She says, I've been living here for years. I had no idea 2 of my daughters were dead. I didn't know this had happened. No, and if they are dead, I had nothing to do with it. Robert, her son, who chose to stay with her, he's also arrested for murder because he set fire to Susan's body when she was still alive. With the statements that they've got from surviving family members and everyone else who's ever been a part of Teresa's life, the police are like, we've got a pretty solid case here. But Teresa is still going, no, I'm not guilty. I'm totally not guilty. But now something is going to change her mind. Robert, that one son who stood by her, he says this to police. If when I go to court, you can make me look like a victim, which he actually was, but he says, if you can make me look like a victim when it really comes down to it, and not like a cold-blooded killer who wanted my sister dead, then I will willingly testify to everything that my mother ever did. And police realise that's a good deal. They've got a really good deal there. Because actually, he was only 15 at the point when he was setting fire to his sister's body. Did he know what he was doing? No. Was he under his mother's control? Yes. And what he's saying is, yeah, I've been arrested for murder, but I'm not going down for life because of her. I'm not going down for life because of that. So you need to make me look like I was the victim in this situation, which I was. And if you can do that, I will tell you every detail of what my mother did to us. Now it's when Teresa hears this that she suddenly changes her tune. She goes from not guilty, don't know anything about it, no idea what you're talking about, to okay, I'll accept a plea deal. She pleads guilty to the deaths of Susan and Sheila and the years of abuse of her kids, on the condition that she's not given the death penalty. And that's what's agreed. And Teresa receives 2 consecutive life sentences. And right now, she is in her mid-70s and she's currently still in prison in Chino, California. Robert, he was given 3 years for his part in Susan's death. None of the Knorr children have ever visited Teresa in prison. The kids all went on to live their own lives, not easily. They all had problems along the way. They all faced massive challenges in life caused by their mother. And Terry, the youngest, the one who went to America's Most Wanted and the one who really wanted justice for her two sisters, will say, I'm still not over it now. I'm an adult. It was hell, and I will never forget what it was like growing up in that insane asylum. And so ends the story. Alright, well, there you go. Not exactly a cheery one. Not exactly something to be, sort of... Yeah. Okay, well, there you go. Teresa Knorr. What a crazy story. What an absolutely bonkers story. Yeah, I sort of happened upon this one when I was looking for different types of family stories, and I found lots. Actually, I found some really, really brilliant stuff, but then this one, just the more I read about it, the more I was like, oh my god. It's one of those, like, I can't actually believe what I'm reading. I cannot believe this. The further it goes on, you think it can't get worse, and then it just gets worse, and you're like, oh, it's just getting worse. So yeah, there you go. Alright, so it's time to end the podcast, and as I talked about on the last episode, I've got my new feature, which is listener messages to end with. So let's just have a little listen to this. No messages in the mailbox. All by myself. Don't wanna be all by myself anymore. Okay, so right, one of two things. Well, no, one of 20 things. This is just my nonsense. Either I wasn't clear about what I meant with the phone number, or people just didn't want to leave a message. And if people don't want to leave a message, that's absolutely fine. I've got no issue with that. I just thought it would be quite cool if people could leave a little message that's like, hi, how you doing? This is who I am. Hi, whatever, just want to say this, blah. I thought that would be nice, but nobody has phoned the phone number. And now I feel like a right loser who's got this phone with no messages. I keep checking it every day and I'm like, still no one's phoned the phone. Okay, that's alright. I'll just be lonely. So yeah. So if you do want to phone it, I gave the number out on the last episode. It would be nice to hear from you, and just be like, hey, this is something crazy I was thinking about, or whatever. But if you're not into it, we don't have to do it. It was just an idea I had. Don't worry about it. I got one text message which was nice from Candy, so thank you, Candy, for that message. Now unfortunately the problem is it's such a rubbish phone, right? Such a terrible old phone that it's stuck on caps lock, and I don't know how you change it. So basically, if you do send a text message, it will look like I'm shouting at you as I send it back to you, because she sent a message saying, hey, hope this gets to you, Barry, hope you enjoy the podcast. I was like, yes, thank you for your message, in like a big massive, yeah, anyway. So okay, we're just gonna try this phone thing for maybe one more week, and then it'll just die in a fire if it doesn't really work. Anyway, this is what I did just want to say just quickly before I go. I've got one more episode to do in the family series, and here's what I'm asking. I'm asking for your stories. I'm asking for your family stories. So, I want you to get in touch and tell me your stories. It doesn't have to be your entire family history. It could be one moment from your family that really stays with you. A good moment, a strange moment, a lovely memory of something that happened when you were 8 years old. It could be you talking about the fact that you don't have a massive family, but you have a huge community of friends and they're your family. It could be anything, okay? Just think the word family and get in touch with me and whatever that means. And I'd like to make the next episode just about what your thoughts are and what your stories are. And you can do that in any way you like. You can send me an email. You can record something into your phone, send it to me. You can, any way that you would like to do that and to contribute to your stories of family as an episode, do it. Just let me know. Okay, so that's it, really. I'm out of here. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Okay, goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.